a quick transition, and we'll move on to the study session this evening. So I'll call to our study session. And first up is the discussion of streetlight acquisition policy.
Turn it over to our city attorney,
Mr. Mayor, members of council, Charlie and I are going to have what we hope is going to be the first of a number of discussions with you, because if we do proceed down this path, there will be multiple checkpoints where we come back and seek further council direction and authorization. But I'm going to give you a little bit of background about the legal framework that the city is operating in with respect to streetlight tariffs. And after that, Charlie's going to talk to you about some specifics of the way that we are suggesting that we start to dip our toes into this water. As you know, Xcel Energy is our electric provider. For years, in most Colorado jurisdictions in which Xcel operates, they've had this situation set up where the developer comes in and develops property, puts in the streetlights, and then dedicates those lights to Xcel. So Xcel has paid a small construction allowance, but for the most part, somebody else pays for the streetlights. Xcel ends up owning them, and then they have a tariff that is approved by the Public Utilities Commission, which basically requires municipalities to pay for the energy that's used by those lights, to pay routine maintenance for those lights, so changing out light bulbs, and also pay for non-routine maintenance. So if a light deteriorates to the point where it needs to be repaired, or a truck hits one and it needs to be replaced, we buy them a new pole, give it to them, and they start charging us to maintain it again. It's a great deal if you can get it, but that's the framework. About 6 or 7 years ago, the city of Aurora started looking into what if we owned our streetlights and only had to pay for the energy. We could probably hire a contractor or through city staff and do a full replacement ourselves. We would not be stuck with the what's called the Xcel market basket, because right now, when there's a new development and Xcel owns the lights, they tell you these are the choices that you have. So you heard Pam make reference to sodium, high-pressure sodium lights, which are admittedly not the most energy-efficient lights you can find, and she was right about that. That's because Xcel has decided it is not yet ready to have LEDs or other newer technologies that are energy-saving technologies in the streetlights that we pay for and they own. So, interestingly, when Aurora went to find out, well, what's the tariff on just paying for the energy without a meter? That's the other thing, is that these lights are not metered, unlike other kinds of electricity usage, because we know how long the lights are on in the summer, we know how long they're on in the winter, they average them out over the course of the year. We don't need a meter. Xcel told the city, we don't offer a non-metered energy-only rate for municipal streetlights. If you want to own your own lights, you have to put meters on your lights, and then there's a meter charge that you have to pay Xcel for the meter, in addition to paying for the energy. The city said, how come you guys don't have to put a meter on your lights, but we have to pay you to put a meter on our lights? And they said, because that's the way it is. So the city asked Xcel if they would agree to a new tariff that would allow for a city to own lights, not have to meter it, and just pay for the energy that they use, and Xcel said no. Then the city went to the PUC and said, how do we change this? Then about 17 cities, including Littleton, participated in a PUC proceeding to try to get the PUC to adopt a new tariff that we called the non-metered energy-only rate. We went through 2 PUC cases over a period of 5 years with a PUC-ordered 12 months of negotiations with Xcel in between. Xcel continued to refuse to come up with this rate. So at the second PUC hearing, after a full trial in front of the PUC, the municipalities won. And with this process that started in 2008, in October of 2012, a new non-metered energy-only rate went into effect. So it would apply to new lights. So if there are new developments in the city and the city wanted to own its own lights, we could buy our own lights. We could put in whatever kind of lighting we wanted to. We could maintain it. We just have to pay for the energy. We also could consider, if we wanted to, buying our own streetlights. The city of Golden was one of the cities that initially said, we would like to buy all the streetlights in our city. And then the question was, how do you figure out, what do you buy actually when you buy a streetlight? You buy the pole, you buy the mast, you buy the light head, but what about the wiring at the base of the pole? How far back does it go? In an older community, and we have both old and new parts in this community similar to Golden, you will have some old lights where those wires are intermingled with the other parts of the electric distribution system, and it's going to cost a little bit of money to separate all of those. So how do you decide what's the price for streetlights? In October of 2012, Xcel and Golden met, and Xcel said, we will shortly be getting you our methodology for pricing streetlights. October of 2012. On my way to Littleton today, I had a conversation with the Public Works Director in Golden, and they had a meeting today with Xcel. And I'm intentionally not giving you the long, boring details of the intervening 16 months. But at that meeting today, Xcel still said, we don't have management's final buy-off on our methodology. We've changed the methodology for pricing these things that we talked to you about 8 months ago and told you we would follow up with you on. And we hope in the next month we're going to have a final methodology. So the point is, after a long period of time, Xcel still is not telling cities what will it take to buy streetlights. And only when and Golden City Council is getting very upset, only when cities put pressure on them, and probably some cities are going to have to go to eminent domain. Golden has actually hired a separate outside utility appraiser to come up with their own methodology, and they're about to tell Xcel, here's what we think they're worth, and it may end up in court. Charlie has more slower plans on how Littleton might start looking into this and see what the benefits are and then make decisions based upon that going forward. But we now, because of this new tariff, have the ability to own streetlights, to save money on their operations, to save energy, and to control more of our energy future because of that. And Charlie's going to introduce a couple of ways that he has been thinking about doing that, and we wanted to advise you of it, get your feedback, and make sure we're all on the same page before we go forward. Okay.
Charlie, before you go, Council, any questions of the City Attorney?
So the lights all the lights we put in throughout the city, downtown or neighborhood, they're all installed by Xcel, is that correct?
They're either installed by Xcel or installed by developers and then dedicated to Xcel.
And Xcel signs off on that installment?
Right,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Charlie?
Thank you. In following up with what Ken said, this proposal to take over streetlights was initiated by Aurora. Now there are 4 cities that are actively looking into it. He mentioned Golden. Centennial is also very involved in this, and I have shown on behalf of Littleton enough interest in this to become part of the game. To give you some information, the city of Littleton currently has over 3,200 streetlights in Littleton. Some of those are large ones, such as you see on Santa Fe Drive. Others are neighborhood streetlights like you might find along the street where you live. In the effort to try and do street lighting better, more economical, and not have to deal with Xcel Energy on a lot of these issues, one of which is the placement of banners on the streetlight poles, I have proposed that we take over the streetlights on Main Street to begin with, from Rio Grande to Santa Fe Drive. This is about 66 streetlights, and they're the ornamental type. They are the ones, the acorn globe ones, that Pam Chadbourne has identified in previous conversations with council. Those streetlights have about 25 of our, what we call side-of-pole banners. These are banners that advertise Littleton events and bring some color and activity, vibrancy to the downtown Main Street area. They are only on Main Street from Rio Grande basically to Rapp Street. And Xcel Energy has taken the position of some very restrictive standards if we want to keep those banners on the side of the streetlight poles. Enough that I'm not sure we can meet those restrictive standards. And they may at some point tell us to remove them. As a result, in negotiations with Xcel Energy on this program, I suggested, why don't we just buy the lights? We can own and maintain them, and therefore we control the banners that would go on those street lights. And they don't like that. They are in the street lighting business to make money. And they have given me extreme amount of grief in efforts to try and have Xcel give us those street lights. And this is only on the section of Main Street, not including any of the other streets in Littleton at this point. So I am still proposing, and I would hope council would support this position, and this is why we bring it to you tonight, is that we would take step number one, and this is where I would suggest what we are doing is we are wading into the water of the shallow end of the pool. And if we do these 66 lights on Main Street and take over ownership and control banners and maintain those lights at what I believe can be done cheaper than Xcel Energy and better, then we will be in control of the lights on Main Street and maybe start looking at going beyond that position. They will not, as Ken has mentioned, they will not give us a methodology for how to calculate the ownership value of those lights and the underground wiring that's associated with it. Most of those 66 lights on Main Street were installed in 1987 and 1988. They've been there a while. In our opinion, in talking with Xcel Energy, they are totally depreciated out and not worth very much. Well, that doesn't go over very well with the company. But I've taken a very hard position saying I need a dollar amount. And to tell you what the other position is that I've been working with them on, I said, why don't you just remove them? Just take all those 66 street lights out. And then we will put our own back in, the same 66 street lights. But I'll tell you what, I'll save you money, Xcel, and I'll save the city money. Why don't we just give you $10 for each light, and you just leave them there, and you save money, and so do we. And to be honest about it, they're totally taken aback by that, and they don't know how to react. And now Golden has started to talk to them about the same position that I have advocated in Littleton. So policy question number one to the council is, do you support us going in that direction? And that is saying to Xcel Energy, we want to start this concept of the city starting to take over, own, and manage street lights and begin with just the ornamental lights that are on Main Street from Rio Grande to Santa Fe Drive.
Yes.
Charlie, at CML, I think last year for sure, and I think the year previously, there was a separate study group on that. Is this something that is going to gain traction, do you believe, with the 200 and some municipalities around the state that deal with Xcel?
It's a Ken question.
Yes. I think it is. I'm aware of 5 or 6 municipalities right now that are seriously looking at this in different stages of exploring it, and I certainly am not the, be-all and end-all of it. If I know of 5 or 6, there's probably more that I don't know about. It's funny. There are some executives senior executives at Xcel who have said over the course of these negotiations, we don't make money on streetlights. It's a pain. We would be just as happy to give them to you and let you deal with them. And yet when they met with Golden today and they finally unveiled their next iteration of a preliminary methodology, one of the things they talked about was how much money they were going to lose if they're not able to keep charging the city for the streetlights. So they have factored into the purchase price. All right, so get this. Now the city will own it. Xcel won't have to do the work on it anymore. But in the purchase price for the lights should factor into the remaining useful years of those lights and pay Xcel the income it would have made had it continued to build the city. I mean, it's nuts. So my belief is, at the end of the day, people are starting to realize, cities are starting to realize This is a moneymaker for Xcel, and cities can do it more cost effectively. So there's a money issue, and there's a control over our energy future issue, because Xcel, I'll give you another example on LEDs. 4 or 5 years, 2009 or 2010, under oath in one of these PUC proceedings, Xcel's head streetlight person said, we are doing the reason we're not doing LEDs is because we don't think that they are utility grade yet for streetlights, but we're doing a pilot project in Minnesota, and as soon as we're done with that, we'll know how we're able to proceed. 4 or 5 years ago. They're still not doing LEDs. They're talking about it a little bit more now. Maybe we're 5 years closer to it, but there are a lot of cities all over the country that are using energy efficient lighting for municipally owned streetlights and saving money and reducing their carbon footprint and doing all those other wonderful things. There are, in my opinion, utility grade lights, and this is a conversation that's starting to happen more and more among the Colorado municipalities that I talk to.
Councilmember Stallman?
Yeah, I definitely support it. I would agree with Ken, your comment. I would support what Charlie you described. I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. If these things have been there since '87, utility companies, as you guys know, make money that's called return on rate base. These things are fully depreciated, therefore there is no more rate base. The energy cost is a straight pass-through, the fuel involved in producing electricity. What they make in terms of return on the generating capacity that they've got that comes through the electric charge, that's why they don't want the LEDs, because there's less watts being consumed. But these things, they're not making any money on these. So if $10 to them is a gift, and they get rid of the administrative headache on the whole thing. And I think, we should absolutely negotiate it away. And if we have to take them to court, I don't see how they can justify the thing you described, Ken, about future stream of earnings off of something that's fully depreciated.
But and just I appreciate your feedback, but just to be clear, no one is asking for, at least on staff level, for your direction to go to court right now.
No, I understand.
Yeah, we just want to. As Charlie said, we're getting into the shallow end of the pool.
Nor $10. I mean, I
Right.
just want to be clear. We have been working on this for a while. This has been an issue, both as Ken pointed out and Charlie pointed out, from an electric standpoint and control and management, and then came to a head with several other municipalities relative to the banners, not related directly to the control or the pole issue. But we've been working on this for a while and felt that it was timely to come and make you aware that we're in these negotiations, and if there was not interest in moving forward. So we're not looking for direction other than, yes, staff keep working on it, because they're not going to be $10. They're not going to give them to us. We're not going to end up in court alone. We will do this in conjunction, and part of Ken's role outside of our city attorney is assisting in this on a statewide basis ultimately. And so there's a larger role, but we thought, again, it's appropriate for us to come before you and make sure that you guys are comfortable with the direction that we're focused on.
I mean, for clarification, that was statements of enthusiasm for the direction you're going.
No, I hear you.
Obviously.
But you should hear the statements that we've made, so
Yeah,
you're not out of line.
No, I understand. But
In
I mean,
fact, we've skipped the court system in some cases and gone right to the firing squad.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I mean, clearly a negotiated settlement is appropriate.
Council, other comments or questions? I have one, which is towing the water shallow end versus something that might be of a larger magnitude. What's the pros and cons of a very limited approach to something that still might be limited but at a larger scale?
Okay. Yeah, what I'm going to suggest to you, the next policy question has to do with going deeper into the pool. Littleton Village is 78-acre development. I would like to suggest that we propose it be done with the ESL rate and the city owning the streetlights and managing them. This afternoon, we met with Xcel Energy to float the idea. I will tell you their staff had no idea how to deal with this. No concept whatsoever. They didn't even, most of the people in the room had no idea about the ESL rate. We had to educate them on it. They thought we still had to meter all the street lights. No, you don't meter them. We have an ESL rate, and they had no idea what it was about. So we're going to be going into new territory with this, and I think it's very exciting. I think it's exactly what we should be doing. Mr. Penny and I have talked about this. Ken, I'm sure, supports it. We want to go into Littleton Village with state-of-the-art street lights. LED street lights can be done. They're being done all over the country. Excel says they have a pilot program in Minnesota, but won't even tell me where it is, because I suggested that I go visit it. We got to do it ourselves. And we believe that LED lights for street lights will work. It'll be cheaper in the long run. The developer is on board with this. He has a number of street lights he would like to use in that development, both in the commercial and the residential part of this project. And they are excited to move forward with the two, with the same premise that once they develop and install the street lights, the city will own and maintain them. Now, one of the questions is, how do we maintain these? Well, it turns out that our traffic signal contractor that we've been using for many years and is highly qualified in managing traffic signal management also does street light repairs and maintenance. And they have offered us a price to do it less than Xcel Energy is charging us right now. So I'm absolutely convinced we can get better lighting, cheaper, more energy savings in the long term, and serve the community a lot better and be out there in front and showing people that we can do street lighting better than a private company. And the ESL rate allows us to do that through the PUC approval.
And I have one other question. I have to imagine Xcel is not alone in their approach, and they're not the only energy company in the country. Are we aware of any other utilities that have gone through the transition, moving ownership back to the municipality?
That's a really good question, Mayor. The woman that we worked with as our expert, who is the certified utility facility appraiser, actually used to be with R.W. Beck, which has a Colorado office and then got bought out. And anyway, this woman was a partner in their Seattle office and now has her own firm. One of the things that helped us in our case is she testified at the PUC here about 6 or 7 other states that already offered this non-metered energy-only rate, but she also has worked with a handful of cities, some in the Midwest and some on the West Coast, that acquired their streetlights from the investor-owned utility. And basically what she said her experience was, I'm paraphrasing, was there are some utility companies that are very easy to work with, and there are some utility companies that will make your life miserable and are just impossible to work with. And so it runs the gamut, and I think we know what we're in for here.
So just to say, there are some precedents on transition approaches that have been adopted by investor-owned utilities.
Yes, and I suspect that, again, working with her, and one of the reasons we really wanted to come to you tonight is because Golden is moving forward and Centennial wants to move forward, and we have an opportunity to share some of these costs as opposed to hire a consultant by ourselves if we were to do it 6 months from now. Again, the utilities that were easy to work with were reasonable in negotiating what the price should be. So if we end up either in front of a court or in front of the PUC having to justify our pricing, there are other examples around the country we can point to where this was done for a price more comparable with the way we're going to propose that it be done.
Yes, Councilman.
So, and I think this is for Mr. Penny. So before we procure the lights, we're going to have a discussion on the details and.
Absolutely. I mean, we have no idea what the price is, as you heard.
We're
So
ways away from that.
Yeah, and we don't have money appropriated for this, so we'd be coming back to you guys to get approval and all, so, yep.
But at that time is when I want to hear more about the lights, the details, luminance, all that good stuff, and pollution.
I really think if we were to lay out a time, one of the things that, I mean, I hate to say this, but it's just been my experience. You got to give them deadlines and you got to stick to it, and it will actually help us tremendously if we can say the council is behind this. They don't want to wait 16 months like the Golden City Council has had to wait to find out what the price is. So Charlie can approach them and say, here are the 66 lights, 60?
Yes, 66.
66 lights. We'd like a price, and we'd like it in the next 30 to 60 days, some reasonable period of time. But we may engage the same consultant who is the appraiser and say, based on the methodology that she helped put together for Golden, here's what we think those lights are worth. So now they've got their number, we've got our number. We sit down and try to negotiate, but we got to put tight time frames on it, or else it will drag out forever. And at that point, we come back to you, hopefully, and say we've been able to work out a deal that we can recommend. Do you want to go forward with it? And if not, we may come back to you and say we have not been able to work it out. We think we've come to impasse in our negotiations. Will you authorize us to proceed through acquiring these, through eminent domain, which the state constitution and our franchise with Excel gives the city the explicit right to do.
So I like wading in as deep as you guys want to go, including with the development, Charlie, that you mentioned, right? But I do have a question. Is it not possible to have solar lighting?
We have solar irrigation systems. We have solar for accent lighting. It's very marginally successful. And I don't know, I have not researched at all the possibility of using solar to light streetlights. I've never seen that. I would have to study that, and I have not done that.
Because I was thinking in the development where there might be a place to put solar that would generate more than just the solar light bulbs or whatever.
Yeah, I haven't seen any studies on that, and I would have to research that.
Okay, it was just something to toss out there, but I'm supportive of our going forward with as much as was laid out here.
Other questions or sentiment?
Getting thumbs up?
Any objection?
Unless you feel it would be, to use Council Member Stallman's expression of excitement, too enthusiastic to just dig up the 66 signs and lights and just drop them off in the parking lot over at Excel, so make sure they understood we were serious.
I understand.
Yeah, we may be back with that option, but not until a later date.
It just seems like they need to hear that we're not joking around, because that's what they seem to.
No, we have heard enough that we can say council understands this, they want to move forward. We hope it'll be successful and we can do it on a broader basis after that. And we need to sit down and talk turkey and get some details out there. So hopefully we'll be successful, but if we're not, either way, we'll be back with an update as we get into the process.
Very good. My only piece is, deeper in the pool with a new development is one. Hopefully, if there's a methodology for 66, some aspects of that can be extended for others, and then we can figure out how deep we want to go on that. So, thank you. Council.
Thanks, Charlie.
Yep, thank you. Thanks, Ken.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Next up is the municipal trash service discussion.
Trash talk.
And Councilmember Brinkman is going to take us through this.
Take one and pass it. Council, bringing this evening really with, and I'm probably going to repeat this quite frequently, with one intention, and that is that we move forward with a gathering of additional information. A number of years ago, Council made a conscious decision amongst ourselves that if we had something, if a certain council member had something that they were interested in pursuing, but thought that it could occupy a decent or fair amount of staff time, we'd bring it to council and make sure that there were at least a majority of council willing to go forward. So that's really the intention tonight. This isn't asked to go forward to create a municipal trash service. This is an ask to go forward to delve into some of the answer a lot of questions that we don't have answers to, find out more information, etc. A little bit of background. What you have in front of you is information from Thornton, and it's all stuff that is, some of it they've brought a bit to our application, which I'll kind of go through, but for the most part.
May I suggest you back up a little bit, and unless you were going to get there and explain the initial conversation with Thornton, what the context. Okay, apologize.
But they're all reading it, so I want them to know what they're reading.
Tell them to put
Stop
it down.
reading.
It's like the PowerPoint handout.
Stop reading. I know, I was going to wait. Okay, so I had a conversation with Mayor Williams. She's the mayor of Thornton. A number of months ago, we served on the urban drainage and flood control district together, and we're sitting next to each other, and she made some comment about their trash service. I said, I didn't realize you guys had your own trash service. She said, yes, we do. How's that work for you guys? I mean, she's like, it's great. It is, her words, a cash cow. She said, it is really a opportunity that has proven itself over and over again that we did the right thing. And so then we started talking, and they do offer recycling and a number of other things. And so she said, listen, I'm going to put you in touch with our environmental services director. His name is Adam Lovato. I will give him your information and have him get back in touch with you. So the next day I got an email from Adam, and he had some additional information. He included some of their brochures that they have for the public, and he kind of gave me a little bit of a summary. And it was interesting enough to me that I think that it would be worth having an additional conversation with him. So I got a hold of Manager Penny, and I asked him if he thought this was something that would be worth looking into. And he said, yeah, it's probably worth a call, at least a call to Adam, and at least talk about some of the questions we have and how they did it, how it's working, some of that general stuff. So we did that. We made a call and talked to him. And in that conversation, there was enough that came out of that for me, it felt like it was worth us looking into it a little bit deeper. A little summary from some of what we talked about. And Bruce, you had asked about this earlier, they started their trash municipal service in 1992. So they've been doing it quite some time. It first originally started as a property tax supported, and then they moved it into an enterprise fund in the early, this was the early 90s, but that can't be true. So a couple of things that this is not a sole provider. They working in the same, their other commercial trash companies are still in the city. They have not excluded them. They are just part of that mix now. They are part of the offering to the consumers as a choice. The other thing this is not for commercial. They said stay out of the commercial part of it, the business part. It gets hairy and scary. They also did not recommend looking at doing anything with any of our, what are they calling them now, manufactured homes, our trailer communities. And they also suggested staying away from apartments. But that detached, duplex, townhomes, condos, that those were all folks that they were servicing and that was working very well. They have a couple of benefits. They do their own water billing, so they're able to tack this bill onto the water bill, so they've got some of those efficiencies they gained. They also, when they started up, they had to borrow money, we don't have all the details from him on that, but to get the equipment and that type of stuff. He shared with us, as you guys kind of go through this at your leisure, shared with us some information that you can get some discounted trucks and that you can manage it a little bit more efficiently than starting with all brand new, spanking new stuff. What we did do is, in talking to Adam, he suggested to us, send me some of your population numbers. I'll throw them into our number mix, and we'll see what it looks like for you guys in terms of expected costs. And so what he came back with was that by applying Thornton's cost, city with a target market of about 10,000 single-family residential units, which is what he kind of pinpointed for us, in 13 square miles. And the location in the South Metro area is important too because of landfill usage. That he estimated a startup cost in a neighborhood of $2.4 million, with ongoing operational costs of about $1.1 million. This includes, what they do is they have the bins, so their costs, they bought the bins and they give the bins to the customers. So there's an opportunity to charge for the bins. There's a whole lot of little pieces within the financial that they do it their certain way, but there's a lot of levity, a lot of opportunity for anybody to do it their own way. But they do every 2 weeks recycling pickup and then every week trash pickup. But what they said is that they're hearing a lot more, and Seattle just went to this where they're offering every other week trash pickup because recycling has gained such popularity. So there's less trash to pick up with the recycling. So gives the cities an opportunity to kind of tweak to what the customers are wanting. You're not finding that being as readily available with the commercial haulers. The other part of it is that the landfills are all operated and owned by the larger trash haulers. So one of the things he said is, don't think that, you need to, anything you decide to do, you need to go into building relationships with these guys. And so he said that is all part of, the planning and the preparation, but that you need to do that with the fact that they have the landfill areas. He said the recycling isn't really a moneymaker, but that it's a huge need, that there's a scream from the community that they want the recycling. The other thing he said is that it really provides the city an opportunity to do a lot of outreach and a lot of kind of the community events, the pickup of the electronic recycling, or to put recycling dumpsters at the school to do a newspaper recycling drive and stuff like that. So that there's, and you'll see some of the stuff that they've got in here. So there's opportunities beyond just picking up trash. I think that one of the things, the primary thing for me with this is that there's no doubt that Thornton's found a way to make money at this. They've got over $5 million in their reserve, in their enterprise fund. We don't know what that would look like for us. There's a lot of different compilations that we can do. We could start it at an enterprise, run it that way for a number of years, have a nice balance in there, move it into the general fund and use it for something that we need. It's another opportunity for us to find money that we may be not paying attention to, or maybe letting it just kind of slip through our fingers at this point. So, again, there's a lot of information in here. A lot of it is really centered on what Thornton does and how Thornton does it. But I think it's enticing enough, it's interesting enough that my ask of council is that we ask staff to move forward to provide more information on how this would really start to look in Littleton. This is also, if I can just add, 2-3 years minimum process. This is not something we would kick off the ground, January 1, 2015. This is a process. It takes a lot of planning, a lot of work. It takes the money. The other thing is there's an opportunity to include some of our neighboring communities. I've outreached to a couple of them. There's interest. And so as we move through this, there may be an opportunity to create, that type of work on that type of level. So I really, without, you guys are going to have a ton of questions. I still have a ton of questions. Nobody really has any answers. So the ask is, can we just go get the answers? And Michael, if you don't mind, if you would give a little bit of an idea of what kind of time you think it might take, what kind of staff engagement it might take for us to come back with something that'd give us a little bit of more meat on the bone.
Certainly. I think before I get into the future, I'd add a couple other thoughts. We did look at our sewer bill, and we can easily tack on an additional bill if the council wanted to do this for a negligible increase in that monthly or that annual cost for us, depending upon how you want to bill. Excuse me. And then the handout that Debbie just passed along, the first 3 pages, it's double-sided, but first 3 type pages came from Adam in Thornton. We just gave him the number of single-family residents. We gave him our size and location, and he drafted all of this on his time because he believes in the program that they have and is more than happy to assist us in any way. And this is transition into the future because he is willing and has the blessing of his manager to come down and join the council for the study session as if there's an interest in drilling down deeper in this. The second, the remaining 2, 4, 6 pages is a cutout of the Thornton 2014 budget dealing with their environmental services fund, which, as Debbie pointed out, does a healthy annual revenue generation and does have a healthy fund balance. We talked to him about thoughts on ours. And, of course, it deals with what number of participants we have, ultimately what rates we charge, and a lot of other variables, but points at Thornton as a successful opportunity. So I think the question really for council, as Debbie has pointed out, is there are service providers out there. Adam, if he were here, he would tell you that one of the things they're most proud of is their customer service. They will come back out after things like holidays where people forget that they had to delay it a day and then they miss, et cetera, and they'll have a truck that runs out and picks up these guys. And so they do it for a cheaper monthly service than the other providers, and he believes that they provide a higher level of service, customer service, and that's part of why they maintain it. It would be a competition with an existing private sector business model. They run it under an enterprise fund. That's an opportunity for the council to consider. Obviously, I mean, you guys know the pros and cons of an enterprise fund. You could also run it as a department of the city, just as a normal a fund, and then it puts obviously you have the risk associated with the general fund with that. But I don't know that there's a lot of time that we would have to spend necessarily, at least out of the gate, because I think Adam has volunteered to spend a lot of time sitting with us and running the numbers with us. It's part of, I think, what he does to assist municipalities who aren't in this business. There's other models that I know the council kind of shifting gears a little bit. Councilmember Cole had brought up the idea of doing a sole provider or limiting the number of providers through contract. That's what Sheridan's doing right now. This is a multi-year plan. There's a lot of notification. There's a lot of PR as you start moving down this road. But as Debbie pointed out, we have spent probably about an hour on this total to date and would not want to spend much more time without the council's support to start the inquiry. So just to be clear, I think what's on the table here is another trash provider operated by the city within the city limits, providing service to duplexes and single-family residents. And what we'd be doing as far as additional work is looking not just at the 10,000, it's about 9,800 something single-family, but looking at what the number of duplexes are. There might have to be some survey work to determine what level of participation we would get. We'd have to run some numbers based upon the number of participants on what the monthly fee would have to be, and so we'd be running a lot of math numbers, bring finance into it. Again, have Adam assist us with that based upon the experience they have. Probably look around and look at some of the other municipalities. Denver obviously does it. They do it through property tax, but they still have experience on what the issues are that they have running that program. So
I would just add to, Michael reminded me, Adam did say that they did do a 12-month outreach program to the community, and so that would definitely be part of that timeline. You know, whatever we decided to do would be a pretty extensive outreach program. And another point I just wanted to add was that this is really something I'm kind of, when I talked to Heidi, when I talked to Mayor Williams about this, it really seemed to me that this was something that was a good plan to start working on now, because where it's really going to pay off is in the future. Where it really starts to pay off is 5 years down the road, 7 years down the road, 10 years down the road, where you've built the system around it, you're running efficiently, people are used to what it is, you've got the community has embraced it, you're part of the mix, and you're able to make money at it. And so this isn't something that is a quick fix or a, something, add water and it happens. But I think, I'm trying to think about, a little bit longer down the road. And I think it's also a benefit to us to look at some additional revenue sources. So, thank you.
Quick questions, anyone? I know there's lots of questions. I'm looking for only the quick ones.
Quick comment is, just from a legal perspective, when this is studied, I'd like to know kind of where legally it fits in to be developing something that's in direct competition with the private enterprise out there.
You have
The short answer is no.
So,
It's a policy issue, clearly, for the council, but there's nothing that would legally preclude the city from doing something like this.
Okay. And then my other question or comment, just, we know that trash trucks are the greatest maintenance issue for residential streets over a long period of time. Those trucks running up and down the streets are the heaviest vehicles on a routine basis. It would be nice if somehow in this we incorporated somehow a way to limit or control or do something to make a difference for our
I'm just
residents.
going to probably say that in the initial stage, we may not have that information other than the soft side.
Well, and we can pull it back out, but we did a memo when Councilmember Cole had asked about this, I'm going to say a year or two ago. You're really limited. This is a separate, that's why I wanted to make sure you understand, this is actually adding a vehicle, potentially adding a vehicle on the street. It's a completely separate conversation and a different process to essentially do what Sheridan is doing, which is saying we're going to have one trash provider. Again, you can only do it for single family and I think up to triplexes or fourplexes, maybe it's duplexes. So you can't force it on multifamily apartments or commercial. There's always going to be multiple trucks out there, but that's a separate process by which you go out and you essentially, as the municipality, say, we're going to bid and have one provider for those single family. So Sheridan's going down that approach. They're in the 6-month waiting period while the other garbage truck companies are notified of this and they can make their comments, et cetera. The other alternative you have beyond what Debbie has proposed is to have it be mandated municipal service delivery by the municipality for the same single-family and duplexes, and charge, for example, through the sewer bill, and I have to pay it. I can still choose to call another company, but I'm stuck paying the city regardless, and so you have an incentive then, in theory, not to hire that other company, and thereby reducing the number of trucks that are on there, either through that single contract service provider, whoever that may be, or having it be a municipal truck and a municipal driver down there. But this is it's a competitive in the private sector, but it also creates probably the greatest flexibility for people to be able to choose who they want to pick up their trash. There's so many things you can say about talking trash that will.
Other quick questions?
Did you want quick responses too? Sorry.
Make sure you were
Big.
So I have some comments, I think, rather than questions, and they're sort of cattywampus all over the place here, but have we gotten any input from citizens on whether or not they might like something like this?
We have spent, as I stated earlier, about an hour on this. So we have not done any outreach.
Well, it's not so much outreach as asking for input, but maybe they're the same. Why couldn't we float this on Open Littleton, get a little
We can do, there's a variety of things we can do. This,
But anyway, that was the one thing. But I do have some concerns. And you probably have to sort me out here because there must be something that I'm not remembering. But what do we do now that we actually are providing a service and making money from?
Well, we have an enterprise fee with the sewer.
yeah, I guess making money in the sense that the enterprise funds, the sewer fund,
Is paying for the
is
sewer.
paying for itself.
Right.
Correct.
We're not making money on having the
Well,
sewer
it's
paying.
if I may, Debbie, that's I think the term she used. You're not making money on the others too. It's still providing a service under an enterprise. I think you have to charge the service, the fee commensurate with the
It's my
service.
understanding that most of these things, if not all that you're talking about, we are essentially recovering our costs. The permit fees and so forth.
Correct.
We're recovering costs of the employees, the whatever materials, all that kind of stuff. This seems to me not in keeping with something that's either an implied or somewhere a stated policy. So that's one issue. And I thought we had an implied or stated policy that we would not compete with the private sector.
Not that I'm aware of.
Well, I
but
think
it certainly is.
historically, I think that's the way the council of the city have operated, not to compete. So I'm concerned about that.
A very valid concern.
And we would be adding probably another truck each week to the ones that already rumble through. So that's, of course, a concern to me that we're adding more wear and tear, or we would be. But anyway, those things are, I've got to really think hard on those because as neat as this sounds, it's not sitting comfortably with me. And I appreciate all the work you put into this, Debbie.
And it could be two trucks, the recycle and the trash truck,
Yeah.
just to be clear.
So anyway, those are just thoughts. So I'm not feeling real supportive.
If I may, Mayor, I think just on your first point, Councilmember Cole, again, I would point to the terminology separate from the policy of what an enterprise fund is, because Thornton does use it as an enterprise fund, and whether it's terms like it's a cash cow or not, those revenues are still derived from the cost of the service provided, and it does have a healthy fund balance. So does the sewer fund, so does Denver Water's enterprise fund. Most fund balances in enterprise funds have very healthy fund balances because the risk is within it.
What would we use it? Like the sewer fund has a healthy balance because we need to have a healthy balance to make sure we can pay down. We don't then take it and use it for city operation.
No, and
would this not then come into use otherwise?
That's what we were saying earlier. If you set it up as an enterprise fund, it would be an enterprise fund. If you set it up within the general fund, then those revenues could be anything beyond that risk within that fund balance would be distributed within your total risk within your, whatever your reserve fund balance happens to be. And so in theory, you have dollars. I mean, we don't know because we haven't done the analysis, but in theory, you would have additional dollars flowing through the system and thereby would have additional monies that are derived from interest from whatever the risk that's held by the whole of the general fund balance as opposed to an enterprise fund. So it depends upon how you set it up. Just like you can't take the money out of the sewer fund, enterprise fund, you wouldn't be able to take this out of the enterprise fund unless you removed it from an enterprise fund status under Tabor, and then you're again bringing it into the risk of the general fund.
So it seems to me that I won't comment on that part. So let me try to retrieve this other thought. we do, I think, already provide some of the services in various ways where people can drop off hazardous stuff and so forth.
We do the spring cleanup.
So, and when we do the leaf recycling, we recycle tires. People do pay us to take those tires and so forth. So we do some of these things already. So it's not like we aren't doing some of this. So I'm really would love to hear input, not outreach, but input maybe through, our online commenting.
Peggy, to your point, while we haven't done any outreach to the community at all, there was a period of time not too long ago where probably in a span of about 2 or 3 days, I got at least 2 or 3 emails regarding any kind of recycling bins around the community. I think King Supers did offer those at one point, and then with their remodel plans, I think they shut those down, and it impacted a number of people in the community who were used to using those and were not paying for recycling. This type of program would allow us to put community recycling bins out. That's just one comment from the community, something they were looking for. Which you're not, if you're running a municipal service, you can do those things for your community. The commercial, of course, would not be doing that. The other thing is a lot of the services that they have listed here on his fund, the functional responsibilities of the fund, are also things that we do also do for our community now, but we don't charge for it. So it is something that we are pulling out of our general fund to pay to do, because all of it cost us to do it. So with something like this, that fund would help to fund the expenses of these as opposed to pulling it out of our general fund.
This type of service, to me, is essentially a commodity service. I mean, whether you pay to have somebody drive a waste management truck down your street, or an Eagle, or a Browning Ferris, or whoever it is that comes by to collect your rubbish. I don't know that there's a whole lot of brand preference involved. I think from our perspective, I'm happy to have staff do a little bit of research to see if it makes sense by virtue of the fact that if we can provide an alternate solution that is less expensive for the same commoditized service, then there's an advantage to the community. And I think we've got a fiduciary responsibility to take a look at that. In that context, one thing that I would be curious about, and I'll just throw it out as something to consider, in as much as Sheridan's contracted with Denver, and if Denver's got an economies of scale or a critical mass in the vicinity.
They're not contracting with Denver.
They're not contracting
No.
with Denver.
I don't know who they're contracting with. It's a private provider.
Okay. So then let me back up and ask, is there an opportunity, would there be a way to look at somebody like a Denver to see if they'd extend service to us to avoid making the upfront investment? So if they were in a position to offer cost savings and share some of it back with, some sort of a franchise arrangement with the city, everybody might win. I don't know. But I'll just throw that out there.
I'm guessing probably not in another municipal service provider, but that, I think, is to the extent, and I can see what's happening in Sheridan, is the intent that Sheridan, one of the benefits of going to bid as the municipality, because that's what you do. You go to bid and you say, okay, if there's 4 service providers, hypothetically, in the city, and here's the RFQ, you put that out and you pick that one, and in theory it's going to be a lesser rate than what people are paying right now because they're bidding against whomever, or if it's not, you decline all bids and let it go. But I think that's probably the more realistic way, because Denver's not going to drive through Inglewood to come to us to provide a trash service at a lesser cost necessarily. It'd be using the existing providers that are in this area, or
Well,
as is being proposed.
No, and I appreciate that. I mean, but, and to Debbie's point, though, again, just beyond hypothetically, you know, if other communities like Englewood were interested and there were an opportunity to partner up, then maybe
Certainly.
it does become more economical for
You
them.
can have the bi-cities, the tri-cities,
Bingo.
yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So, and I think she's probably talked to their councils, individual council members. I've talked to both managers, and we can, once we have some data, we can sit down, and Sheridan's going to be under contract for, I think it's a 3-year period, so they're interested in sitting down and having the conversation, but they're pretty well locked in on what they're doing for the next 3 years, which gives us the time to continue this conversation. This is not a drop everything and figure this out. This is, again, the inquiry of a council member who has said, is there interest by the council?
And I mean, I think that's right. I mean, I think, you know, the out-of-the-box type stuff, you know, you don't know what's out there until we kick over a few rocks, and maybe there's something, you know, good that's there, and if not, we don't have to do anything. So, okay.
Just my thoughts on this is from Bruce mentioned a fiduciary responsibility. If we can find a way to do something that's overall for the good of the community, whether it's finding some way to have an enterprise fund or help revenue in the city or help reduce costs for citizens, it has a motivation that would say, hey, we need to know a little bit more, understanding both the costs and the prices, and then just from a perspective would be, you know, if we did an exclusive contract, as Sheridan is doing, what that might look like. Also, something short of that would be if neighborhoods got to the point where they could actually have a reduced rate in either model, whether we're going outside or inside, and allowing for something like that. And the information I'd like to hear a little bit more is Thornton is another provider. They put their name out there. What's the adoption of the municipal services within their communities, and knowing a little bit more about that. And I'm sure Adam has that information. Mm-hmm. So I don't think any of these are necessarily a huge amount of research. It's just pulling the stuff together on that. So with those points that everyone made going around the room for sentiment, Jerry, do the research.
What I'm hearing is if you like your trash service, you can keep your trash service.
Correct.
But you're still going to pay for the city service.
No.
I thought I heard you say that.
That's a different model, Jerry. There's
Okay, that's what I'd heard. Okay, so and thanks for correcting me. I guess at this point, I would rather the city just stick to doing what we should be doing, our infrastructure, things like that. I don't see the need that we need to grow the city of Littleton government, at the expense of the private sector. The private sector is out there. There's lots of services out there. If you don't like your service, get another company. We did that in my neighborhood, and everybody has the option to do that. I think we're just growing government is all we're doing. The services are already out there. They are affordable. Government says they can do it better. If you like that takes me back. If you like your service, you can keep your service. But I'm totally opposed to this, and I have no interest in pursuing it. Period.
Randy?
With respect to the conversations about not competing with the private sector, I'm kind of a small government guy, and so I generally agree with that. But I guess, sensing a bit of a common theme tonight. First, we approved an IGA with Arapahoe County, thanks to our city clerk over the years, who has essentially replaced this previous agreement that we read about. We were paying somebody $85,000 a year to run that, and we're now doing that at a quarter of the cost. And with our newfound partnership with Arapahoe County, we're essentially providing the same service to ourselves for less money, more efficiently, and getting some control. Second up, with our city attorney and Charlie were to talk about taking control of our destiny with regard to not only cost savings but efficiencies, but being able to direct what's going on in the city rather than being at the mercy of Excel or some other big company. And to me, this is intriguing because it's a continuation of that same thread where we get to at least explore, may work, may not work, we don't know. Something that I heard a moment ago that I felt was interesting and something that we would obviously research is Seattle going to, if I understood correctly, more recycling and less trash, but that's less profitable. I sense that Denver is a city that's maybe seeking in the future to do more recycling and less trash, but obviously that's something that we'll figure out. At the end of the day, it's a business model. You look at it. If it doesn't work, you move on. If it works, then we'll have the opportunity, I think, a year from now or 2 years from now, with the information, the real information, to expand upon and to make an intelligent decision and see if it makes sense for us to continue to control our own destiny as a city and that of our citizens, to provide a public service by cost-saving efforts. We know we have limited opportunities to raise tax revenue. We keep hearing about landlocked and this and that. So I think we have to become more and more innovative as a municipality in terms of figuring out a way to repave the streets that we've been talking about and to provide police protection and fire protection. So if this has the possibility of being a positive step in that regard, I'm a proponent.
Deb, I'm going to assume you want to go ahead. Okay, Peggy? No? Councilmember Beckman?
I would like to have more information. I would like to have more information if I was to dispute it or not want to do it, I want to do it based on a little more information. Initially, I'm not feeling as comfortable as I'd like to about it, but more information was what I need.
Councilmember Stallman?
Yeah, I'm okay with having staff noodle it a bit.
I was waiting to be told to noodle. Thank you.
Where's Phil on this?
I'd like to see more. Mine is probably looking to give either our neighborhoods or some leverage in this, and whether it's providing it through a municipality or being in a position to negotiate something with the private providers. I think more information can possibly give us that.
I just can't help but think that we're going the way of our federal government. Let's do more for the people. Let's do more for the people. Let's do more for the people. I'm totally against it, period.
Understood. And I wasn't necessarily saying charge ahead. I was saying get more information, and I think it
We're
gives
charging
us...
ahead, getting more information. That's exactly what we're here for.
So, yes, recognize it's mixed.
I hear that. I would ask that if you guys have questions after reading, understanding that you just received some of this data, shoot me an email as you guys noodle it yourselves, if I may, Councilman. And that will give me some additional clarity and direction on the type of research that we're doing. And based on the conversation that I heard, we'll reach out to Sheridan as well and learn what we can about that process and see what kind of cost savings they think they realized or will realize.
Yep.
And I'm just going to try to clarify one thing I said earlier because I know it's what's going to come back at me, is when I had my initial conversation with Mayor Williams and her comment to me about it being a cash cow was what? And the conversation ensued from there. I'm not doing this because I think it's a cash cow. And clearly, we've got their numbers. It's not a cash cow for them. This is, for all the reasons I've already explained. But I want to make it clear that the intention is not to go out there and try to capitalize on something like that. So, yeah, probably saying too much, and now I'll really have.
So, what you have is more information, no action yet.
Okay.
Council, that's the end of the agenda. Any other items? Okay. Through for the evening and adjourned.